2015, and I've had the pleasure of working with Coyote on two projects now. The first one was Beyond Shut Eyes, QT BIPOC Dream Anthology, which is an amazing collection of, I think, 28. There's a lot, 28 contributors from a project that Coyote instigated quite a while ago. I mean, you can maybe talk a little bit more about that if you want to mention it briefly, Coyote. It's an incredible project that was designed by a mutual friend of ours, Ren Kim, who's an incredible designer. But the reason you are all here today is to celebrate the belated launch of Beyond Shut Eyes, Two Spirit Love Medicine, which is a amazing book of Coyotes. I guess the first book that solo publication that they've done, and it's so incredible. And it includes a foreword by this amazing writer Mimi Zhu, who has a book coming out in August. Be Not Afraid of Love. Yeah, Be Not Afraid of Love by Penguin Books. And they're an incredible writer. And it was such an honor because I was such a fan also, as well as Coyote. So having them write about this with their work is incredible. And then we had this incredible illustrator, which I think you've all seen the cover. Oh, I hate these Zoom backgrounds. You can't really see, but you can see the pixelated cover of Ash Luca, who is, I'm just still so, I got to meet them in person a few days ago, and they are just like such an incredible illustrator that you've probably seen their work in multiple different projects. Yeah, and I'll just quickly read the intro or the synopsis of the book. Actually, I want to share one thing first that just kind of shares the specialness of this. It's a post that Coyote made of folks with their copies, because I know for both of us, Coyote and I, seeing this book in the hands of people has been, I mean, it's always a joy of any project that I do, but especially it's been so special seeing folks post about it. So I just want to thank anyone who has gotten a copy already for the support and love, because this book was entirely self-funded, as is everything that I do. So we really appreciate the love and support of the book. But so I stop rambling. Let me read the synopsis of the book. Heart of a Shapeshifter, Two Spirit Love Medicine is a collection of poems, short essays, and prose by Coyote Park. It explores transformation, nonlinear transitions, ancestor worship, dysphoria, T for T romance, non-monogamy, queer awakenings, and various intersections of Park's lived experiences. Woven throughout the collection are 8 vessels, taking shape as theme chapters and representing lifetimes. Throughout these vessels, Coyote reflects on extensions of themselves, their lovers, and what love medicine means to them. Heart of a Shapeshifter is born out of the passion of brown leather dykes, trans deities, and the fierce and overflowing protection of spirit. A collection of writing to all of those yearning to love and shaped freely. Oh, that I've never read that out loud. That's such a powerful. I did not write any of that. Just as an FYI, I don't write that poetically. But I want to take this over because this program's not about me. It's definitely not about me. It's about Coyote and Park. So, I just said Coyote and Tee. So I want to take it over to them. And thank you so much for publishing with me, Coyote.
Oh, thank you. Oh my God, thank you, B. It's been such a joy to work like with you for so long now because we worked on the first book we did was Behind Shut Eyes, which was the Cutie by Puck Dream Anthology, and that's been in the works since like the beginning of quarantine. Like it was something where I put out like a open call, got a bunch of submissions and worked on it for like years, almost until like a year and a half, almost 2 years until we finally like published the book. Honestly, not even a year ago yet. It's be published in October of 2021. And now working and I wonder, is it any possible that I can be pinned or do I pin myself? Whoa, okay.
You're pinned already.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Um and and I was gonna say that basically it was a project that I approached B about, and I had so much creative like control and leadership in that in a way that was like really supportive. And I, after finishing that anthology and publishing it, I reached out to B and was like, hey, like, I know with that work I really wanted to uplift other poets and prose artists, and like short stories, but I was like, oh, I really, I've been like had so much of my own writing that's been like collected over time. So this book for Heart of a Shapeshifter that B was like at the end of last year was like, oh, like hell yeah, let's do it. It was a book that it wasn't a project that felt like I approached it with like, here's this thing that I'm starting from scratch and here's my timeline of making it. It was a book that I just fully was like, I want a place to kind of release and process and allow this work to like exist on its own and not like put too much pressure on what it needs to be. And but yeah, so that's how that came to being, and kind of bridging the beautiful intro from B. A little bit about me, and is you know, Ayukwi Woklokamicanas, like thank you for coming. My name is Coyote. I go by he, they pronouns, and I I'm like a storyteller above everything. My practice is mainly in photo, film, writing, paintings, a lot of just visual work. And something that's been really fun about creating this book is really exploring more forms of like what storytelling can be. I feel like a lot of my work bridges like folk stories, like mythology, dreamscapes, but then also like a lot of my lived experiences and how the two communicate with one another. I actually have been working on like other pieces of writing that's branched off of ideas from this, and this really was like a template for me to kind of go over central themes that are like in my life. And I can read, before I kind of jump into more of the discussion, I'll read to you the, after Mimi's really lovely forward, I wrote kind of like almost like a preface. It's more of like a like love letter opening up to the reader. So it says, dear reader, I love you and miss you. I can't wait to see you again. I want to tell you what I've been up to lately and hope to hear from you soon. Let me take you back to some of my memories from this past winter solstice. I hope you take this collection of writing as a long love letter. During the winter solstice, I met with a psychic. It was just in December of 2021, right before we entered 2022. 2022, I kept telling my loved ones would be a good year. 222 has been tattooed on the side of my neck to remind myself I'm on the right path. The psychic in Lenape told me I had 8 lifetimes before this one. I was born on 2-8 at 328. My Valentine's card to T last year has this photo of 2 cats dancing on it, and the writing reads, I want to dance all 9 lifetimes with you. So to this 9th lifetime, I want to grow old knowing that I got to dance this to its fullest. Part of a shapeshifter, two-spirit love medicine came to me when I thought about the way that two-spirit folks love and the way I have loved. It holds all that is precious to me. We are all brought back to our mortal coil to learn and grow, so each chapter in this book represents its own lifetime. Vessels 1, a man with midnight in his hair. Vessels 2, brown dyke in a hide of leather. Vessels 3, biologically trans god. Vessels 4, birth of a new sun. Vessels 5, Kumiho, whose erotic is power. Vessel 6, Venus overflowing with love. Vessel 7, queer elder with lucky tattoo. Vessels 8, time traveler of many tongues. For myself, this lifetime has been suffering and endless gratitude. With this work, I want to provide medicine for myself and for you. I hope this medicine allows you, dear reader, to feel seen and to feel free to shapeshift. When I send my sweeties and friends letters, we usually check in with some questions to fill the gap of time since we spoke last, also to listen to what each other has on their mind. To my transgender, expansive, gender nonconforming, non-binary, intersex, mahu, mushe, fahafine, two-spirit, all the indigenous identities that colonialism has made me even fail to mention, and other queer readers, here are some questions I have for you. Have you felt yourself love in other lifetimes? When is a moment where you knew it wasn't the first time you were experiencing it? How does nostalgia inform your present self? What was a moment where you felt the most yourself? What was a moment where you felt the most yourself? Who do you feel loved by in your most honest and authentic self? Why are you feeling unlovable? Because you aren't and never will be. Nulumek, Sarange, Coyote Park. Um, and yeah, that I really wanted to read that and opening up the space and opening up this conversation with T, because a lot of the chapters go through the themes that were mentioned in the vessels listed, and that's how I kind of structured out all of these ideas and concepts I've been working through, and just mainly you know, both T and I are still really young, and so a lot of this is something where I talk to her about, where I'm like, this is something where this may feel like lessons to myself and things I'm like reminding myself, but I feel like in even just a year or even a few days from now or a few months from now will be things I'm always just kind of like expanding or going through or recognizing that these are stuff I have to like kind of remind myself. Um and I'm gonna read one more piece before I kind of move over to T to like any of her thoughts or any conversations that she wants to open up. But there's this piece that I wrote on the same line of that I feel like for me was kind of the biggest note that I had to self. So I have that letter that opens up to the reader, and then this to me was more to myself. It's open to people and more to like talk about like, you know, non-monogamy and growing and partnership, but at the same time it's something that like was really just me trying to talk or think through this for like my own understandings of like loving. So it says, devotion is a virtue I learn in loving. We learn healthier relationships through examples, through action. How do we have healthier relationships when we never grew up with quote unquote good examples? I ask this question to myself often and pose it to my friends. You see, growing up in a quote unquote broken family will leave you feeling like love is a shattering act rather than a mending one. And that is the path to unlearning. That is where I found myself healing the marriage I witnessed through the love that I share with my wife. My special, beautiful, loving, kind, hilarious, bold, daring, adventurous, talented, creative, one of a kind wife, T. Let's pause to recenter. This is where I'm opening you up to my heart that is gaining the courage, the skill, and the dedication to shapeshifting. This is where I share my journey into loving, and it arrives here to my current partnership I truly want to nurture for wherever my wife wants to take this love we share together. If she wants to take it to the rivers, to the mountains, to the heavens we both share, I will bundle it up, our sweet love, and carry it from my own womb. Maybe, and this is the anxiety speaking, this will be painful one day to read upon, but let's not get lost into loss, for that is continuing a cycle that my bloodlines know is habitual, a need for control and a fear of not having control over how one loves you. The most you can do is stay true and put love into yourself. The rest will flow as it should. I know my worth. I'm devoted to this life I live. I'm devoted to being honest, dependable, someone she can speak with openly, encouraging, reassuring, someone to trust, and human. I'm devoted to making mistakes and doing better, actively doing better. I will not be so selfish. I will hold her through the rough of it because, damn, this life can be brutal, and I will make it easier. I will make it fuller. I will hold her into the cold desert night of Southern California. I'll have the sun pierce through blankets of velvet, and I will kiss her all over again. I will not let the morning light be an exit point and every argument be a brick wall. I will open the windows to let her see another day.
What's crazy is you'd say that kind of stuff every day, just like as like a good morning text, and it would take me like 2 business days to say like hi back. Like we have such wildly different like I don't know, communication styles. Like sometimes I get like used to like all the poetic language you use around
You'll
me to
just
like
send like cat memes to me.
no, yeah.
That's like, you're
You
cute.
send me like
And it's
a
like,
paragraph of like, oh, I love you, like next
my Venus
lifetime,
is
all
in
of that.
Pisces.
I know. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
send you like memes.
It balances out.
I know. I think so too. But what? I guess I should introduce myself. Hi, I'm T. I'm the wife. of Coyote.
Stop.
That's my professional title
Oh my God.
for
No.
today's call sake.
Filmmaker, writer.
Professional muse. But yeah, I don't know. You kind of covered part of this as to like what drove you to write the book, like what motivated you to start the projects. But I kind of want to like, I don't know, add a little more and ask you like why an anthology like this?
Well, I just have really bad ADHD, so that's how my brain kind of works.
Mm.
I feel like it's just like piecing everything together. And like I feel like you already know, but maybe not other people know that like most of what I read is anthologies. I read so many poetry collections, or that's kind of the books that I've been able to finish the most, rather than like novels or things like that, even though I'm like trying to. Like you've been reading the like detransition baby, and I like haven't even gotten to like the 4th chapter yet. And so it's something where I feel like this has just been something that is kind of how my brain kind of works, and so that's kind of why it's been so like open and vulnerable with it, is because it's just kind of like fully just like a reflection of that.
And when you were writing it during that process, were you like trying to finish one section at a time, or just like writing a bunch and kind of allocating them to different themes afterwards?
Well, I remember early on, I would just read you different poems that I sent, where it'd be like, and I love how you're being like formal Q&A. I'm like, hang out. Well, I was gonna say that like I would show you different poems that I wrote, or I'd have things in kind of like my notes app, or it'd be like things that I like wrote in my notebook. And I feel like I was seeing it more, this feels more of like a collage that was like allocated to different bodies and spaces. And that's kind of why even in the vessels chapters and those reflecting different themes, like having like a man with midnight in his hair and talking about like indigeneity and my connection to like my father and my like trans boyhood as like a native like trans mask person. I say trans mask in quotations as a two-spirit person. But and then other chapters like Venus overflowing with love, that has to do with non-monogamy. It's all like these types of central themes that to me are kind of like little characters, you know, that I'm like, these are like, if you're writing like a screenplay and had characters, like these are their little character traits. And so I had all of these different pieces that I had in a huge like Google Drive doc that was like so disorganized at first. I literally had a journal and went on a writing retreat with my friends, and I had to like write down physically on each page, like here's this page is this body, what are like the poems and pieces that make sense to me that go with that. And then I kind of revisited the Google Doc and then started kind of moving things around again. So it wasn't like I wrote like a man with midnight in his hair and was like, oh, this has to do with like me processing like brown masculinity for me, or my connection to like land and elders and ancestors. It wasn't like, okay, now I need to write a piece that has to do with ancestors. It was kind of like, this is kind of things that I'm already always thinking of and in relationship with. And so I'm going to give it like honor it through this vessel.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. Like I remember in the beginning, you were just like reading me random excerpts like here and there. It wasn't until like later on when you started like organizing everything and grouping things together per vessel that like I could see the whole thing come together, you know?
Well, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What was your relationship to me reading you things like prematurely or early on, or having conversations around stuff that was like within the text, or even like more personal stuff, or even just pieces that like maybe made you take a second to rethink? Because I know for you and I, like, you know, I feel like there's a misconception with us being pretty public about our relationship and about being, you know, like having like non-monogamy or being like married young, or being two like trans people in love, like I feel like there's a misconception that we're like the knowledge keepers of this, or we're people that like know our shit, when really we're like, I think this, and this is me kind of moving it into this, what I told you earlier when we were talking about the book, of this feeling like it was like a template to like the film we're working on, or other stories that we're thinking of like having these kind of like messy queer characters that are like, and I think in the book I do talk really about like, oh, what did it mean to moments where like I have been in love with someone that was like not reciprocated, and I had to make peace and like accept and love that, with like in terms of non-monogamy, or all these things where just feeling like being open to not everything being picture perfect, which I think can be very different than some of maybe like the photo work that people see of just us like cuddling, you know what I mean? And I feel like this here was kind of me just thinking more, almost could be almost like philosophy in a way, like me just like thinking very abstractly about stuff, but also pinpointing direct moments in my life. But I think it moves it into, with the film we're working on, that's honestly, I was about to say that's honestly the most honest. That's the most honest story that I feel like we've ever really developed together. And so what has like that been like for you to kind of see all of these conversations unraveling through the book and through the work we're doing now?
What's like, I've obviously like never been in a relationship where I feel like there has been this much like, I don't want to call it publicity, but that's what kind of it feels like sometimes, there are like parts of our relationship and marriage that we like share online and like put it out there, whether it's like a photo you make of us, or like writing, or things like that, like there are many like outlets that our personal lives just kind of like are like made to like consume by other people, and like I'm still getting used to it. Like I don't know what it fully feels like, because I'm like living through it,
Yeah, and I think we've been talking more to like what does that look like moving forward, of just kind of creating more like energetic boundaries around social media, because I feel like you and I, like when we first met, it was a very different landscape of like what that looked like and felt like, and now like even more so, like I've done Q&A stuff where people are always like asking me about like your partner's, your non-monogamy life, and you have like your own dating life outside of me and you, but that's not something you have to be so hyper visible about. And I feel like I really respect and admire the way that you're able to create those kind of like, that space just for it to be for yourself,
right.
And so I think that this conversation moves into really the love story film we're working on, or thinking about like showing messy queer love, is like it feels like enough distance. Like it feels like you and I could process things, that like conversations we've had, or experiences, or ways that we're like learning and growing and making mistakes and trying to do better, trying to hurt each other less, because in those people we're always like, there's miscommunications, there's things that like aren't always like in like a cheesy rom-com love film, like there's things that are, life is kind of a romantic drama in a way. And like I think that this story we've been telling has had the most like respectful distance, where we're like, okay, how do we imagine it in this world that we're kind of creating separately of us, that's informed by us?
Yeah, and that's like a talk we've had multiple times before, right? Like to what degree of ourselves are we gonna like, are we willing to share, whether it's like fictional characters that are like created by us and like kind of reflect our history and like values, or it's like directly like pictures of us, or I don't know, your writing that's like about the conversations we've had and things like that, you know? And I feel like there's no like answer to that. Like I feel different every day about like what I'm willing to share and what I would rather keep to myself and things like that, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that I feel like that on that same page with even with my own practice, like with the book, it's something where I'm so excited about all these other forms of writing that I've been doing that's been more playing within fiction. But this for me kind of like recentering back to the writing that's in here has I think something that I notice in a lot of books about like loving, that even though they're so beautiful, it'll be so vague. And I think for me, like the the process of being vulnerable about stuff, even if it's not directly about you, but it'd be about my queer awakenings, or would be about my transition or things like relationship with my body, I really needed to write because I mean, especially in terms of nonlinear transitions, like I've been on hormones now for almost a decade, and it's been off and on. And I remember the first time I went off of hormones feeling so like scared of being of in here. Wait, I want to read. Please didn't prove it. And then I'll pin you back. But it was just something where I didn't really know if the world had space for like the complexities of myself. And it's because I never saw it and I never heard like more visible conversations around it. Even though I knew it existed in the corners of different like friend circles, or I grew up on an island, so it was also a little bit more inaccessible. I had so many people that even now, still, even more recently, will come to me that grew up on Oahu with me that were like, I was able to like come out as trans because of like conversations I've like heard you have with different people or with myself, or seeing you in community. And that makes me really happy, but I didn't really have that much. Or if I did, it would be about like in ways that I felt like were still a little bit like really distant from my experience. And so something I really needed to process in this book were things that, and I think this is something I'm just trying to move towards with all of my art, even if it's not just directly my lived experiences, but more about like themes that I'm like gravitate towards. But I want more of my art to like make this world and make things feel like spaces that I can exist in, other people can exist in, and we can like not have to water down parts of ourselves. And so a lot of that came with so much honesty, because I think the reason why people like things have felt so watered down is people feel afraid of it not being like palatable, or being something that other people can comprehend. Like for myself, even like in terms of transition wise, like I even, even I was at the bank today and they like I was telling them like go by Coyote, but it's not my like name like right now because I'm still going through like name change. And they were like oh, like what pronouns? I just said like he, him, like I go by he or they, but I just like didn't want to go through like because I was like, he makes me feel comfortable, and I didn't, and it's like interesting just navigating public spaces where you're still doing things out of other people's comfort than what feels good to you. And so I feel like for the book, I was processing a lot of like, how can I just make myself comfortable? And a lot of that was just looking at times and moments where you're like, I don't know, I was talking about this with at a really wholesome conversation with someone about like the queer awakening poem stuff. We're talking about that. Someone who came to the event that I did in LA, the workshop for the book, and the person said, oh my God, I read your book and the Frida Kahlo reference of like the Frida movie with Salma Hayek, and like the like tango scene with the two women, like that was also a moment where I was like looking at myself and questioning things. And I think it was just like these like little like you know, like I feel like the honesty doesn't have to be like, oh, here's this really devastatingly hard moment that I went through in my life and I need other people to know that like you're not going through it alone, but also the moments of just like really like playful aspects of life that like we're kind of like, oh yeah, I've been there, you know. And I wanted that book to have that. Even something that I read, which I can kind of read really shortly now, kind of in terms of, you know, I already said like I'm not the non-monogamy pro. I'm learning and I'm definitely growing and I'm always practicing. And I feel if anything, like he's a little bit better about synergy. I feel like in terms of for me, it's a lot of just me being able to heal through a lot of past wounds in relationships, and you know, like we came from such different backgrounds on like relationship stuff in the past. So I feel like you've given me so much compassion that I'm like trying to give to like all of my different like lovers and partners. And but I had this one piece that I wrote that, you know, I read this one out loud to the people in the at the live talk in LA and workshop, and everyone that was there were like, because a lot of people there were like people that were interested in non-monogamy but not practicing non-monogamy. So they were hearing this and they're like, whoa, like, because they were saying that like the thing that I debunked in this piece was something that they always heard their friends that were like newer at non-monogamy saying, which is the whole phrase of like, oh, like non-monogamy is like liking different flavors of ice cream, and I like write in the poem that I don't like that phrase and I'll like read as to why. And so it was cool to have people come into this space that like for me, like I'm writing this piece and I'm recognizing that like I'm still learning what different relationship styles and love dynamics can feel like and exist as for like long-term stuff. But and so recognizing that I'm not like I'm still figuring shit out as well. But it was cool to have like my reflection and thinking about this be something where other people could be like, oh whoa, like this is helping me, just like even if I'm not thinking through it exactly like how you're thinking through it, at least it opens me up to like some questions I have for myself. And so the piece is called Multi-Love Outside of Commodity. And it says, a hojicha tea and a burning of tobacco at the back of my throat is to be consumed with reverence from my hands to my lips. There is a misconception that we seek intimacy outside of one person because one person cannot give us all that we want, that they cannot satisfy all of our desires, that to be a lover is to give and give and give and give, to take and take and take and take, as though love is a product to be consumed, as though we are love objects. I hear people say we like different flavors of ice cream from time to time and want savory over sweet. Non-monogamy is just like that. They reduce non-monogamy to something as trivial as food preferences. This isn't how I want to love people. It puts a pressure on the person I'm seeking to be something I am taking in and releasing. Instead, I value multi-love outside of monogamy as an act of honoring people with the dynamics to share, the differing dynamics, exchanges of energy, and the beauty in those varying forms of relations. I have lovers that I go on casual dates with. I have lovers that I travel miles for. I have lovers that I kiss and call friends. I have lovers that I build a home with. I have nesting partners, sweeties, past partners, future partners. I honor these all not as an experiment into what I think I can gain from them, but who they are to me, the emotions that a platonic friendship does not give recognition to. Before I ever say, oh, life is too long or too short and one person cannot satisfy nor fulfill me, I will live by, I encounter so many people in this lifetime that I want to be honest with the feelings that are there. This has nothing to do on my ongoing partnership, and I celebrate that always. My partners do not owe fulfillment. My partners are not to satisfy needs. Only I can do that deep, deep down and inside. Multi-love is an act of exploration, not extraction.
I want to kind of like dial back just a little bit when you're talking about like your experience with people coming up to you from like Oahu, sharing about like how you've helped them like come out. And also like with events like this, like you always have people like coming up to you and expressing like how thankful they are, kind of, you know, like the role you play and like people coming out and like figuring their stuff out, you know. Like how do you manage that? Does it ever get taxing for you? Because you keep saying to yourself that you're not like, it's not like you have a PhD in like being trans and non-monogamous or anything like that. There is no like guideline to any of this. How do you like, I don't know, how do you hold space for that?
I think something I've been reflecting on a lot lately, especially more recently in my life, and this book has definitely been uh like a map for that. I keep referencing this book as a map because I think that whenever I get kind of lost about even my own values, I come back to it. Like even on that last piece that I read. But I was gonna say that something I've been reflecting a lot is for myself as an Indigenous trans person and that specific experience, and writing about that in this book and having that relationship with my community, with the people around me, with other Indigenous trans people. That especially I'm so grateful for the abundance of Indigenous trans friends that I have and family that I have in person and also online. But something that we take on a lot as people and as community members is, and historically has been a thing in our communities, is people seek um like guidance and comfort in us because that's been our historical role. And it's something where even before I even transitioned, like years ago, even when I was like a like a kid on island, like strangers would come up to me and would like dive really deep into like, oh, I've been really depressed and going through this, and we'll just like, and I just be hanging out on the street and people just come and have those conversations with me. And I think that it's been a lot of energetic boundaries, also a lot of respect and like thankfulness around people feeling comfortable and safe to like have those conversations with me. And so I think that for me, I think more and more, and maybe like I feel like you and I, like in terms of conversationally, like when we're thinking about this book and outreach and things like that, like even like a lot of the pieces of writing are things that I've had on captions of photos of mine on Instagram that were like thought pieces I've had or poems that I've written that I put with my photos. And I think my writing exists so much in conversation with my photography. And but anyways, what I was trying to say about that is it's always kind of existed in a social media space, and now it's like in a physical book. So when you're thinking about people that come to me like in a social media space, I was gonna say I didn't mean for this convo on this to like for us to talk so much into like our visibility or my or people that come to me on social media to like, you know, talk about like, oh, you helped me come out, or you helped me like feel like good in my skin, or I talked to my family because of this, or you made me feel like I could talk to my partner about wanting to date other people while still being with them and loving them so deeply. You know, I didn't expect to talk about these things, but it's all so it's all a part of each other. Like the writing in here has been a part of my photo practice, it's been a part of my conversations online, it's been a part of my life. My life has been something that people have talked to me that has like helped theirs. And for me, like I think I get sad about not being able to, like when people DM me about something that like is really sweet, like say it's like a paragraph and it's like hey, like finding your profile has really like helped me. I feel really bad because I'm at a place where I'm just at such capacity with everyone in my life that I don't really respond to everything, even though I'll see it and I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. And it makes me so happy to hear. But I like can't really like always take the time to write that out to every person. And I think this is me again, Venus and Pisces, empath shit, things that you would like be like, you're so cool, girl. You'd be like, nice. And for me, I get so existential, being like, I can't message and talk to everyone at the same time. I always talk to friends about like if we had a superpower, I was like, I wish I could duplicate myself so I could just like have more conversations with people on a daily. And what I was going to say in terms of this being a map or me thinking about my relationships and friendships now, I felt the most in my life at a good capacity to show up for my loved ones. Like I've been FaceTiming my best friends all the time. I've been there for my long distance friendships. I'm going back to Oahu and seeing the people that have raised me and nurtured me that I honor in this book. And my first book reading, my first actual event outside of the LA in person tea workshop was I had like a potluck with my friends. It was like not a capitalistic, like, oh, here's this like ticketing system. It was not like a please buy my book afterwards. It was like I want to read and share love poems to people that inspired this book. And so it was a really beautiful night. And like literally my friends are so gay, they opened it up and they were like, they started it by being like, let's go around and say one thing that we like appreciate Coyote for, us that we like love about Coyote. And they all did that, and I was like, I can't take it, it's too sweet. And you know, that was a night that you weren't in Oahu, but I felt you in spirit. But anyways, to wrap up this whole thing and wrap up what you're saying, like, I admire and appreciate like the impact of everything. But right now, the more and more, and this maybe goes back to our energetic boundary conversation, I just really want to show up for like you, and I want to show up for Seema, my best friend, who's like has a piece in the book. I want to show up for my like long-term loves. I want to show up for my new friendships, and you know, and I think that I feel like I've been able to be so present in a way that doesn't make my friends and loved ones feel disposable right now. And that's something I feel really proud of and I want to continue doing. And sometimes that means me like putting like some like yeah, like putting my direct close loved ones like first above things. Yeah.
I thought I would like open it up slowly to questions, and we do have a hand raise. Are you cool with transitioning slowly into that? Madison, go for it.
I think you're
Oh,
muted.
I think you're muted.
First of all, Coyote, thank you so much. My question for you is, because as you're mentioning, you know, being in public with your relationship and, you know, putting out so much creative work that people relate to, and they, you know, I consume your work and it's inspired me deeply. I was wondering if you ever like hold space for like conversations in your work. Like, do you ever do kind of like group, like smaller group talks where people can like financially, like, you know, like, I don't know, pay to, you know, speak with you, like do it, like hold a session and hold space. I'm just curious because I'm in a messy queer non-monogamous relationship, and I'm always just, you know, looking to learn more from people who are, I don't know, maybe a little bit more developed in their thinking on this path. So just out of curiosity, wondering if you're ever open to that kind of thing.
Oh, I'm not developed at all. But I'm not joking. Okay, I'm just.
You're
I'm
a little
teasing
newer than me.
myself.
A little newer than me. I mean, a little more experienced than me.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm just like feel like I'm teasing myself. Well, I was gonna say that like I just want to make things that feel cathartic to people. Like even the film that T and I are doing, I want to make something where like I had my best friend read the script, and my best friend's juggling like a 6-person lover circle right now, where they're not like, it's not 6 partners but 6 people they're seeing. They make it work, but they said that they read the script because they're doing like stuff in the film. They read the script and they're like, oh my god, this is too relatable, not in a bad way, but in a way where they're like, well, I haven't like seen something that's like direct conversations I've had that were like kind of like painful but like cool to see. And so I feel like I'm like less, I feel like, okay, and speaking of that friend's a tattooer, and that friend's my bestie. Shout out to Seema, who's in the book. But Seema like is a tattooer, but has had people like when they get tattooed treat them as a therapist and come to them and be like, oh, and like really like get into these really, really deep conversations. It seems like I'm just trying to give you some like body therapy, and I'm trying to give you like this artwork that like is healing for you. And I think for me, like I'm so interested and so here to just make things that people resonate with and feel good seeing and experience and like having, and so that people can kind of move the conversations into their like own like spaces. And I think that's what's really fulfilling to me. And yeah, I also just like, it was cool to do the workshop. I'm so interested in doing more things like that because that was more of like, I felt like it still had I still had like my own boundaries in this phase too, because it was like how we structured the workshop I did in LA, and that one was in person, so maybe doing more things like that online. But it was set up where I did like readings from the like vessel chapters, and I kind of gave background on myself, and then I did like writing prompts where one was like, how do you take like themes in your life right now and kind of characterize it into like a vessel, make a prose piece off of that. And then the other one was like writing a spell for transformation, like a transformation spell where I gave people like prompts on that. And so I love like I'm outside of art, my art practices, I like teach sometimes. I just did some workshops at Stanford, and I love teaching and I love facilitating space. I think that for myself, like I'm like not a trained therapist, and I'm also not, and I love the people that are doing that work, and I love the people that are doing work too, like people that are like have whole polyamory accounts. Like there's Instagram people that are like so like here to go into like the nuances of it and to like really like actively inspire like how do we break down these structures. But I'm just like just a little dude that is figuring things out, as T knows. And so yeah, I don't know, maybe that's my reflection on that. But thank you for that question. It's definitely something that I haven't really talked about before.
Thank you. I think that was a beautiful answer, and I think that you are great at what you do in putting out work that inspires people to reflect and bring the conversation into their own spaces. So again, thank you so much.
I kind of have a question or something that I feel like we've talked about a teensy bit, but just like, how like the critiques of marriage that you get, like I think it's so hard for people to juggle this idea of marriage and non-monogamy. And I don't know, I just, you don't necessarily have to respond to this, but I just like it, it's just interesting, like it's just, yeah, I'm just curious any thoughts that you have on this like kind of like expanded notion of what marriage means outside of like what people typically think. Yeah, I don't know if that's worth responding to, but I just know you get critiques or like comments like, why are you married, and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't know, yeah.
um I feel like the thing that I feel like comfortable sharing about this is like the only piece I really really address it in the book, and it was something that I had a lot of conversations with Mimi about, as Mimi and I are both married. But it just says, it's just like, and this, I feel like this is the only thing I'll answer about it, because I feel like it's like respectful and comfortable to T and I, and to also move into other like questions too. But it says 10-22-20, which is the date that T and I got married. It says people need to stop telling me about how my marriage is not anti-government enough, like thinking about like when we talk about like I'm indigenous, so like I'm gonna have like certain people that are like, anarchist conversations around like, why are you married, the institutions. But then it's like weird because it won't be coming from other indigenous people. But anyways, that's my critique on that. But it says people need to stop telling me about how my marriage is not anti-government enough because they have not been in the chokehold of the state and wanting the safety of their lover over their own breath. People need to stop telling me how heteronormative, nuclear family, patriarchal my marriage is when they don't know the loving ceremony of renewal, openness of intimacy, and love outside of possession. The best thing I have done in this life is marry my wife, and I would not change a goddamn thing. And it's true. Like I still feel that way, and maybe this is me being gay online to T, since T, when traveling, is bad at texting and calling, but great in person. But like the best thing I have done is marry T. Like I have like a really cool, exciting solo show coming up, and I've been doing this Netflix program that's really really rad and challenging, and I've been having all these challenging yet rewarding things in my life over the past 2 years. But the best thing I've done in the past 2 years is marry T. And it's something where I we've had recent conversations, and maybe this also be putting my own boundaries and barriers around it, but talking about it really shortly and sweetly about like what does partnership look like us in the long run. And like she's the only person I want to do it with. And like I have many people I want to like love long time and have partnerships with, but in terms of us navigating a marriage and navigating like specifically responsibilities, and both of us, we're both born the same year, we both are kind of like babies and figuring out adulting, and I feel so much more confident and stronger doing all of this like weird thing about living in a human body with like T. I know someone has their hand raised, so
Yeah, feel free to ask your question, Ellery.
Sure. Yep. Hello. Dialing in from Canada here. So I have partly want to like tell a small story of like how I read this book and why it like just meant a lot for me. And then I do have a question, but I read this book maybe 2 weeks ago while I was away in the woods by the water, just like sitting there, appreciating the sun on my skin and like just being fully isolated and away from all my responsibilities back home in Toronto. And I felt like it gave me a lot of energy to just like intake the words that were being shared, and any piece of art that is being shared feels like an offering. And I felt really grateful that I was in the right headspace to like receive something you've put out into the world with as much energy and resource that I had. And anyway, it felt worth sharing that with you. But one thing that I was writing earlier, because the neurodivergent in me is like, I got to take notes so then I can share them later. But I feel like I've really connected with what feels like four dimensionality and like queer futurity in your work. And I can't help but think of like Jose Esteban Munoz and, you know, cruising towards utopia and that. But I think there's also a lot of like here and now, from what I've seen and appreciated from your work. But it's also like traveling backwards and forwards, or at least that's what it feels like as someone interacting with your work. And you're like inviting us to kind of step into those worlds in your work. And it feels like it's just a documenting of the volume that exists in each of us, queer, trans, or not, but specifically through a queer, trans lens. And that's super exciting, at least again, for me as someone intaking that work and appreciating it. But I'm curious to just hear from you kind of your relationship to time and this idea of like queerness being projected into the future and having a role in that, if you believe that to be true with your work. So hopefully that makes sense and is clear.
no, that makes so much sense. Also, it got me so excited. I'm like, hell yeah, let's talk about queer futurism. I did this thing with because the workshop I did here was like a all like BIPOC workshop. So I was talking to people about like we always talk about inner child, but we never talk about inner elder. And so thinking about like futures is not like this thing there, but is something that's like existing in our bodies in current time, whatever that means to people. And so I was like talking about like what are the attributes or peacefulness or like virtues of like an elder that you like have with you at the current like with your like moving through the world now. And I think that like I don't know, I always just have such like visceral like connections to like aging as like a two-spirit person. And so with my writing, I think I'm always just like looking at I don't know, and so many premonition dreams. Like so much of my writing has to do with dreamscapes, like this book, the past book I did with B. And so yeah, and I don't know, and thinking about like I was talking about this with people. I'm just the workshop was so recent, it was literally Monday, so that's why it's like on my mind about the book. But like something I was talking about was like, oh, dreams is not a separate reality or a fragmented reality, but as like truth. And so I think like I feel like a lot of us as like queer people, a lot of our ways that we feel safe to continue like existing is being able to hold on to our dreams or hold on to, you know, this really painfully beautiful relationship with like hopefulness and optimism and what we can build together, what we want to see unfold. And I think what's really exciting for me is knowing that that isn't something far-fetched and is like in the palm of our hands right now. So I think that's something I try to do even in thinking about my like friendships and lovers and people in my life, even my marriage with T. Like it's been a journey, kind of connected back to the last conversation, but it's something I'm so excited to do. Like it's something I'm never like, I don't have a lot of models, but it's unfolding right now. And so that's really exciting. I also oh my god, your question like puts me in so many different places, because I think that not only in my writing but just in my artwork I'm like thinking through that. And I love Jose Munoz's work, so great reference. But but I I don't know, even today, like I think everything I'm doing is trying to make things tangible that I've always wanted tangible. And so this book was doing that, this film is doing that, my photos are doing that. And then today, like literally I don't do music at all, but I like the way I feel so voice euphoric in the way that I speak in Yurok and the way that I speak in Korean. And it's the most I feel connected to my voice. So but I've never heard anything like indigenous languages in like the really like experimental, like techno-y music that my friends do. And I have so many music producer friends. And so I was like talking to my friend, because all my friends talk about sound all the time. And I love the way that I sound when I speak in Yurok. And I was like, oh, like, what would it be to like have indigenous languages exist in mediums that they like haven't been allowed to be in, or haven't had access to, or haven't had like the proper studio equipment to, or ... And so I was like sending my friend these like audios of me doing like phrases in Yurok, and like they're gonna send it back to me because they're messing around with it at the studio today. And I think that's really exciting for me, is just instead of being like, what if this was a reality, or what if this is a thing, I'm just like, I just want to be playful and like mess around with my friends and see like what we can make. And so that's kind of just my approach with everything I'm doing lately in terms of queer futures as like current ongoing things.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It was exciting to see your excitement to that question. I always love like, seeing that with other folks in general. So.
Yeah, thank you for asking it.
Yeah.
I also don't know Jeremy Dutcher.
Can I very briefly tell you about them, if that's okay?
Yeah, let me just pop that down in my Google too, in my tabs.
Yeah, Jeremy Dutcher is an Indigenous artist here in Canada, located in New Brunswick. And I unfortunately know I'm going to mispronounce where they're from, so I'm not going to, but they come from a community where there's very few language speakers, and they integrate that into their music. And it's normally pretty operatic. They have really beautiful piano orchestrals, but they're working with experimenting with incorporating language into their music and increasing number of language speakers, but also introducing more folks to this language that there are few speakers, and taking source files of like folks that spoke the language, I think hundreds of years ago, and bringing that into their work. So bringing some of the past into the moment now as they produce. And I just find they're a really fascinating artist. And when you were speaking, I was reminded of them.
Yeah. Oh my god, I'm excited to check this out. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I've been having a lot of combos around language revitalization lately, which I not to be doing like bring it back to the book. I have a few different pieces that are both in Yurok and Korean, but specifically, you know, with Korean being more obviously commonly spoken than Yurok, really trying to pay tribute to my like elders' tongues that like aren't always get like published, or you know, or and things. But yeah, but thank you.
Does anyone else have a question? Feel free to either raise your hand or type. Also, as it's 8:08, Coyote or T, any things you want to kind of land on or weave past in closing as we wait for potentially.
Yeah, I feel like anyone can write any questions in the comments, and then if he wants to, I like talked so much just now, so if he wants to kind of, if there are any thoughts from any of that. What do you think about queer futurism in your work, T? Or anything you feel about how has been your process with, okay, we're talking about the book or this being a roadmap to more work to come, like how has it been for you doing storytelling with me with the current thing we're writing?
It's hard. They say don't mix up, like you don't eat where you shit, you know, not to like compare that to that, but like that's just kind of how it is, you know. I have been trying not to mix my romantic life and my work, like creative work, but since being with you, it's kind of, those two have been like so intertwined where you can't separate that anymore. It's tough. I feel like when it's bad, it's really bad, you know, where like an argument could lead to both like a fight in our romantic life, but also like in our creative differences.
Yeah, it's hard when it overlaps and trying to create like where can we have separate conversations for such a big project and then also for our personal relationship.
Right. But like when it's good, you know, the synergy really explodes, you know. Definitely. So I'm still like navigating through it all.
How has it felt for you writing the last piece in this? Because the book ends on a letter from you in Korean.
Yes, if I'm being completely honest, I remember writing that in class. Really?
You haven't graduated then yet.
Yeah, I was still in school when I was writing for that. I definitely write a lot better under pressure. So I remember just waiting until like the very last day that I could give this to you, and you were like, "Okay, like where's the?"
When it's about to be like put out the book, but do you know what I think? Even when we're talking, okay, so for looking at a lot of the conversations here about like our agency as artists and our personal lives, and the more and more that that's changed and shifted, and how personal this book is, I feel like that piece I think is the most reflective of even the film we're doing, or even what I want work to be, because not everyone can read that, you know what I mean? Like of course there could be people that are like Korean speakers that can read it, or queer Korean people that read it as well, but at the same time it feels like something that was so personal from you to me, but still felt like something that, you know, was for us. Same with like when my wedding vows to you in front of like my dad and so in Oahu, like I had really kid grade level Korean speaking skills and saying it, but it was still something where like my dad's Korean is way worse than mine and my siblings. And so he like was present for it and people are present for it, but it's still something for us, you know? So I feel like that was something really meaningful to me that you made for it.
Right. And like I definitely am not the best writer in Korean. Like I'm not a good speaker either.
Oh my God, you're literally, it's your first language.
It is, but you know, I don't have that many people to like practice it off of, let alone like to write it.
Which is interesting you say that too, because I was just messaging you yesterday of how I'm trying to go back to like my tutor lessons or things like that, and how I'm like, I really truly do want to grow old with you. And that's something that is a lot of like the foundation of like my care for you and like with you. But I was gonna say that I was saying I would regret it if I was old, like way older in life, and my Korean was still at the level that I'm at now, because you're talking about having someone to speak with. And right after your poem at the end, or your, you know, letter poem, kind of same thing, I wrote like, I will learn to say I love you in more ways than one. I will learn how to listen and understand your love and to not take it for granted, to not lose it in translation. And that's how the book ends. And yeah, that was really dedicated to that vowels that I had that was really butchered in front of my dad that I was like practicing and wanting, like, I want to be able to read that fluently to you. And I want to be able to like learn how to just continue loving you better. But
We have
if
a
you
hand raised.
yeah.
If you want to share.
Thank you so much, Coyote and Tee. I've been such a fan for so long. I'm also an Indigenous art student, and so much of both of your work is just so meaningful to me. It's really special. I'm currently in school for both Indigenous studies and art, and so my mind is very sort of like in the academic sense of interpreting a lot of Indigenous art. And I've had the pleasure of speaking to a lot of Indigenous artists recently. And something that we always tend to talk about is accepting sort of states of apocalypse or states of post-apocalypse, and how that sort of acceptance is in a lot of ways like a key to cultural survival, is accepting that that's sort of where we are now and moving from it. And so I'm curious, as someone who I feel like you have a lot of sort of themes of utopia and romance, and so much clear, like overt beauty in your photography work specifically. And so I'm wondering like what your relationship is to states of apocalypse, or if that's something that you reject or sort of entertain at all.
You're gonna make me cry. Because I've been talking about this a lot lately, because I was saying earlier I feel very blessed to have a lot of like queer like native kin that I'm like in person with, which can be hard because of quarantine times and like being like not being even being able to be around our elders. Like my grandma's super immunocompromised, and so it's really hard for me to see her. And Tee's met her, but we had to like be really like cautious. But I was gonna say that I've been talking about that a lot lately, but specifically around mental health, surrounding like a lot of us, for obvious reasons, have intergenerational trauma, and with that comes like a lot of just and I talk about this with my therapist who's also queer and native, about the veil being really thin for us, and how like how heavy that is to hold. And for myself, like years ago, I was hospitalized for like psychosis, and it was something where I legitimately like thought it was the rapture and thought it was the end of the apocalypse. And so and I'm very open about that, and I have been, and this is something that's happened before I even met Tee. But it's been something that I've met so many other queer like native sibs of mine that have gone through almost like identical like like hospitalizations or psychosis, or like spiritual like psychosis is me. And it's something where I've been actively using writing as something that makes me feel safer in that experience. But also like I love radically accepting Indigenous nihilism. Like we can keep going on about like having to be like, I don't know. And I kind of talk about this with my friends. I'm like, oh, did I give toxic positivity on my Instagram? Because I just tease about it, because I'm always like, I love this person, or I'm like, here's my like can. And because that's literally me in person, like that's me with my loved ones. I'm just very like puppy dog energy, but at the same time, like I'm still very like critical, and I've still gone through so much, and my family has gone through so much, and it's something where like that those like truths exist simultaneously. And I feel, oh, okay. It feels so silly for me to be like, let me read this excerpt that you reminded me of. But I'm gonna read it because it's but I wrote, so it says lucid dream of an aged self. It says chest heavy, can I grab my phone? Cold sweat, bathroom light on. Am I awake? Am I dreaming? Grasping at my phone. Is it in my hand? Am I typing? Hard press, lift up. Key I, spacebar, key H, key A, key D, spacebar, key A. I had a lucid dream of myself as an 80-year-old long-haired, tatted up elder with my hands painting landscapes on her body in dynamic black. Lucid dreams of old transsexuals, lucid dreams of old two-spirits, lucid dreams of old people like me. When in survival mode, aging feels like being able to see yourself a few months from now. I want my people to focus on living, not surviving. There are Indigenous people in the future. There are trans people in the future that are full of life. And so I don't know, talking about like apocalypse or things like that. To me, a future is like a minute from now, or a future is a minute ago. And I like just right after the reading on Monday, my friend Anuhea, who is staying with me, who's like my little sister, like I've been there for her since like 8th grade, but she's like she's Choctaw and Kanaka, and she's someone who like we just like cried like our hearts out after everything, because we were reflecting on even the, you know, conversations on how hard it is to like navigate sometimes as Indigenous trans people, like spirit world, present, like, or what other people experience, and then how to make sense of that and how to take care of ourselves, but also how to hold on to the people that truly like understand that experience and don't like pathologize like you know, that like white settler state institutions do all the time. Anyways, yeah, this just brings up a lot of feelings for me, and it's something that like I finally found a way, and this kind of fiction book that I'm writing, that's like a fantasy book, to like heal from that experience. And have you read A Snake Falls to Earth? That's from oh my god, I'm blanking on the name of the writer, and I feel so bad because we're like friends online. By Darcy Little Badger. That one is like kind of like a fantasy, like myth, like folklore book from an Indigenous writer, and I've been writing in fantasy for this, for me healing from my spiritual psychosis, and me thinking about like gifts as an Indigenous trans person, and how do I make peace with those gifts, but also the hardship stuff. And Darcy Little Badger's book, or seeing like other fantasy things, like writing the fantasy book I'm doing, is the best way I've been able to like just write on that experience without it being too painful. I don't know if that answers it, or if that's just me getting
absolutely.
like okay.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're almost to the end. Any other questions? Now is the time.
Yeah, I feel like we have room for one more question if there is another question, and then if not, T can close us out with her last question that has to do with maybe the themes like we talked about that are like directly related to kind of like, I don't know, emotions carried in the book, or where I'm at, or anything that she's heard that she's interested in.
I can give a final thought. Yeah. That's just reminding me, like, I feel like we've been talking about like the apocalypse and things like that lately a lot. And I think it's interesting because like I am such a fucking downer pessimist, and you're like a very like always trying to look at things from a brighter lens type of optimist, to like kind of like balance each other out in a weird way. And I fully believe, not only do I entertain the thought of the apocalypse, I enter every day leading up to that point. I don't know what it is. I wake up choosing like, oh shit. Yeah. I wonder what the world would look like in like a few decades from now on. It's probably gonna be a shithole, so I should just do whatever the fuck I want to. That's the mindset I enter my day. And I know for you, it's like I don't know, you always try to like envision a utopia, right? Like you keep trying to like, or at least you don't like let the fear of like the apocalypse or whatever like stop you ever from like trying to like, I don't know, do the right thing, like create an environment where more people can like feel loved and supported. I think I learn a lot from like how you choose to go about that. It's like small things. It's not like you and I have any like power to change any of these events, right? We could feel so like small but I think I learned to like kind of change my own perspectives, because that's like the only thing I have control of. And if like the whatever end of the world is like inevitable, I guess the only thing we can do is like to change our perspectives around it. Yeah, I don't know. I learn a lot from you, and those are my final thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said. Like, I feel like a lot of even just the last question or me opening up about my hospitalization or psychosis stuff, like, I feel like in a way I've already died. So for me, I'm like, just want to like choose love. And that's kind of where my ethos is with the people in my life that I hold close. And with this book or with my art, is I'm like, I could make so much work about suffering, but I've experienced that enough. And I don't know, one of the first books I've ever done a book club to, when I used to do book clubs during quarantine, was to I Hope We Choose Love from Kai Cheng Tom, which is a trans girl's notes from the end of the world. And that talks so much about apocalypse, and that talks so much about, specifically for Kai Cheng Tom, is like a trans woman like navigating world as, you know, apocalypse, and like how to grapple with that. And for me, I'm like, I don't see apocalypse as like, oh, just it's inevitable, or just this thing that's like, maybe this goes to the whole like, okay, we can reference everything everywhere at once, all of these like things that are like layered, and me talk about the future is layered, the inner child, inner elder, like with us at the same time. Like, I genuinely think like apocalypse is unraveling within us and within everything, but utopia is also, you know? And yeah. So that's something where I feel like I look to the utopia because I've experienced so much of the devastation that I'm like, I just want to, like, I feel like something that I've been having a lot of people ask at my photography is like, are you making images because this lack of trans representation? Are you making this images because of lack of like like queer folks of color, or like indigenous people, or all these different layers of things, you know? And I always say, like, I'm not trying to fill a gap. I just want to make images of moments I want to hold on to a little longer. And so I think that's with all of my work. It's like, I just want to, I think building, I don't feel like I'm constructing a utopia. I'm just holding on to things that like mean so much to me, and things I like want to just like look towards, and that I want to hold on to pleasure. I want to hold on to closeness. I want to hold on to, and knowing that there's grief in that, knowing that there's sorrow in that, knowing that's already there because it's like constantly present. But I'm just thankful that I can still continue living these moments. Like, if I really, because I like had a heart attack when I had my psychosis and like hospitalization. And for me, I'm like, I got through that, and I got to marry you, and I got to live this like life in California, and I got to go to my homelands more, to my reservation, and I get to spend more time with all of these different like people in community, and I get to meet like a really sick, cool person almost every day. And that's what everything's made up of.
Well, what a great thing to end on. Thank you so much to everyone for coming. I feel like most of what I do is a salesperson. So if you haven't gotten a copy of the book, here's a little link. There's a little link. For the rest of the month, we're doing it's all sliding scale. So pay what you can. But thank you so much, Coyote and Tee and Caroline and Center for Book Arts. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, B, Coyote, T. This was really lovely. Thanks everyone for attending. If you'd like more information about Center for Book Arts, I did put a link in the chat. Check us out. We have lots of stuff happening this summer. So yeah, we're here. All right.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.